Quite on the set.
That's right.
Yes. Hi, I'm Diana Montfort, and you know, this is, yes, the Diana Montfort Show. And here we are. And my guest is the unique and amazing Mr. Harold Channer. Yes, the host of Conversations with Channer, which you see on Manhattan Neighborhood Network on Channel 34 at 11 a.m. as we film this. On every day, actually.
Every weekday.
Every weekday. Mm-hmm. And we are going to discuss, what do you want to discuss?
Follow up on what we were doing before,
we might not show those shows in order.
No, they might not be in order.
Okay, so why don't we discuss the universe?
If you'd like, whatever you want.
Let's discuss.
You want me to get rid of the graphic now?
Yes, and our credit button. Yes, do please.
Okay, very good.
Okay, good. So we're going to talk about whatever we're going to talk about. Anyway,
yes, right.
My guest, the fabulous Harold Channer, and here he is.
It's wonderful to be with the fabulous you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
I am infinitely I, as someone once said. Where were you born?
Detroit, Michigan, middle class. My dad was a lawyer, and
What kind of lawyer?
Well, he was a general practitioner, but he died very young. I was only 13. Oh. He died, and he was born in 1899, and he was 48, and that was the average age of a male in 1940.
My mother died at 44.
Yeah, it was really amazing. It was now 78. We made progress, and probably go further. He was a lawyer, and my mother was the best mother in the history of the universe. Our house was
my father was a mother.
There's a lot we could tell. It was a gathering place for everybody in the neighborhood. And it was a very privileged upbringing. I had two older sisters, wonderful, still in touch, and that's where we were in suburban. Not the suburban. It was actually Detroit. And it was a wonderful
Detroit is
upcoming.
Beautiful. I've seen Detroit. It's very lovely.
Well, it is. It certainly was then. There was about 1/6, I think, of the national economy had to do with automobiles, and Detroit was the center of it all.
Yes.
So there was trees and gardens and everything all over. There were, of course, some seedy parts. There were some. There are some. Yeah, it's gone down now, and maybe because everything's gone to computers and automobiles are made in other parts of the world and so forth. But it was a great place to grow up, and the neighborhood was great. It was just a real privileged upbringing.
And
intellectually curious. We had the Encyclopedia Britannica, Harvard Classics, a lot of interesting intellectual talk going on, and a center of that kind of thing. And I was always so that was the context.
Now, before you were a cable personality, you were a professor.
Yeah.
What made you want to teach as opposed to be a lawyer?
I didn't want to teach. I actually thought of going into law, and when I had to be drafted, in those days they had the draft. Well, I'm older. I was born in 1935. So that's the middle of the Depression, I guess you'd say, and everything.
So you're 21 years older than I am. I was born in 1956.
You can do the math better than me. That's right. And so I'm 75 now.
Oh, and you look great.
I'm okay, but I've always been just intellectually curious about everything, and I forget what the question was. Why not a lawyer? I almost did. I was drafted into the Army during Korea. I was so crazy that I actually went into and I clashed terribly with the military. I didn't like it at all.
Well, you don't like authority, do you?
I'm pathologically anti-authority. I may be overly so. And also you have to be sort of in touch with that. But I really like the idea of freedom. Individual liberation.
I've always thought that's a good thing.
And so forth, rather than and I'm afraid all of our institutions are authoritarian. That's coming out of history. But anyway, I went into the Army, and everybody's got Mickey Spillane and what kind of books and whatnot. And I had a great big thick tome on torts, which was sort of silly.
A shortcut to popularity in the Army.
I know, and I thought it was so crazy and everything. I even got what they called an Article 15.
They like tarts in Mickey Spillane. You like torts. No, but they like tarts.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Anyway, but I'm sorry, but
I
did a couple years in the military and all of that, and got out, and then went to university, and went to Wayne University in Detroit, and then went on to did a master's. And I like geography because you can get away with being interested in everything. What I'm really interested in is everything. And I really think there ought to be a department at the university level of everything, rather than the specialization where they break everything down.
Liberal arts, that sort of...
Well, liberal arts is in that direction, but what you need, Bucky Fuller was a comprehensive...
We both love Richard Buckminster Fuller.
Well, and there are others, but what you want and what we need is not specialization, and they tend to specialize everything and break it down into individual disciplines. When the computer first came, it was linear regression. You get in great detail, and you could break everything up into small parts, and what it does is like intellectual divide and conquer. And Buckminster Fuller observed you got people, some people call them Illuminati or the great sea pirates that run the world, and always they have, and so forth. And they're not at all worried about dullards. They're worried about smart people, and they get them co-opted by discipline. He said he thought it was a conscious thing to create graduate schools so that you get the best minds coming up, so specialized out on something about the use of the pluperfect tense in 13th century French poetry in the south of France, southeast of France, and they get so specialized out that they don't
think, olive grove.
They don't think about the whole and become a threat to the guys who think about the whole.
Or
the comprehensive
My father
pattern.
was into Tesla the way we're into he was an engineer, and he was into Tesla the way we like Buckminster Fuller. And Tesla...
DC, yeah.
Yes, and Tesla was also... an intelligent troublemaker.
Absolutely. He died in the building right near where I live on 34th Street, right near B&H.
New Yorker, didn't
That's
he?
right.
Yes.
Right now down from B&H where you can get the tapes we were talking about in a practical base. But anyway, that was that. And then I went and did the doctoral work in Bloomington and so forth. But it goes on and on. Did the dissertation work down in Bolivia. Lived for a year and a half among the Aymara Indians with my new wife at the time. We got an
Who's now your ex-wife?
My ex-wife, as it happens, and then it was...
Do you have any children?
Yes, we have two wonderful children. They're doing much better than
girls, what?
I have a boy. I have a girl born in 1966. Lisa, she's an associate...
She might not appreciate you're giving her a birth date, you know.
Why? Okay. Anyway, and then David was born in 68, and she's an associate professor, tenured professor of theater in the University of Minneapolis.
I'm a drama major. That's okay.
Yeah. She's really good. She's great. Both kids are great. The kids are great. They're really great. But anyway, I don't want to go on that. And then it just interested in everything, and lived and did a dissertation on the Aymara people of Bolivia. That's a cultural hearth. We've had 4 major cultural hearths. We had based on agricultural patterns that came out of Paleolithic times. They had wheat and barley in the west, including much of the Indus Valley, I think, but certainly Europe and Mesopotamia, Egypt. They had rice, a mix in the Indus Valley, and you had rice in China that made possible civilization, security from the food, the Neolithic Revolution. Then you had maize in Central America, and there was a civilization developed, and there was a 4th major one. There may have been others, but there's a 4th, and that was what they call the High Highland Food Complex, which the most important component of which was the potato. The domestication of the potato, quinoa, and oca made possible a civilization at Lake Titicaca that at the time of Christ had developed an art that rivaled the old world. And they had dating. We didn't have any carbon dating of artifacts until about 1950. It just didn't exist. We didn't know how the brain worked. We didn't know about neurotransmitters. We were so bloody ignorant. And
even 10 years ago.
And the pace of the knowledge and the understanding is going exponential now. Carbon 60 I'd like to get to. That's just over the horizon and so forth. But anyway,
what is carbon 60?
Well, that's another thing. Let me get to that. But they're talking about it. So that's what I did. The thing. It was a cultural hearth, and that was we're all out of Africa 200,000 years ago.
A cultural hearth, as in the hearth of a fireplace.
Well, the cultural
hearth,
as
opposed to heart, as in
Well, it's a place. It's a place where people went through from hunting and gathering, and then so it had to do with agriculture, a means of getting security from the food quest, so that it made possible surpluses that made civilization possible.
Because once you have enough to eat, you can think about, hey, I think I'll paint the wall of the cave. Or
Yeah.
something.
Well, that actually.
I'll make a stone hammer.
Well, the painting of the caves in France that went before the Neolithic, they were doing that. So that impetus was there. And we had developed up the hominoid line a self-reflective consciousness that is unique to Homo sapien, it seems
Well,
to
so
us.
far as we know.
So far as we know. Okay, well, it's everything's interconnected synergetically in the universe, and we're all part of a single system. I agree with that. I like the concept of Gaia. But anyway, that's that was a culture. You had Mesopotamia, you had Egypt, you had Indus Valley, you had China, you had and another one was the Lake Titicaca.
Which is impossible to say without a half smile. Lake Titicaca.
Yeah, well, it's 12,500 feet, and it's geographically isolated. It's a very unique high highland complex, very near freezing in the growing season, even with climatic differences and so forth. And it was there that they discovered the potato and quinoa, oca, and things, and built a civilization. And it was dated, finally, when we got dating, there were little artifacts that had Margaret Mead and had worked on it, elements of a Tiwanaku was a civilization that was established there. They extended their sway like civilizations will as a foundational culture to the Andean area all the way to Venezuela. They had an expansive period. And then we had little artifacts of a pre-Tiwanaku culture called Chiripa. It was a hacienda near the type site. And I didn't know what it was, but that's what I was looking for and did investigation there. They finally dated it. It was 2600 BC. They had agriculture, and they had developed agriculture there at the Titicaca Basin, largely, one would think, outside of influence from outside that geographical area. So that's a curve where you go from Paleolithic hunting and gathering to Neolithic to civilization to high civilization to imperial civilization, and that's the Aymara people that Evo Morales was finally elected to the presidency of that country, and they have been treated shabbily ever since Pizarro.
Do you think, being half Spanish, of course, I'm feeling a little guilty here, but do you, well, no one in my family was a conquistador, maybe a conquistadora, but that's another story. So tell us, do you think civilization as we know it today is in a decline, or do you think we're in a state of flux and are changing and are experiencing growing pains and going towards
a
different reality?
Let me touch briefly on it, because I came back to you in the earlier program we did, 1970, October 12th of 1970.
Yes. Which I would go now the year one. In 1970.
No, I say it's going to become to be seen that, because the fact of what was going on then has been overlooked, because it's so very inconvenient to all our institutions.
What was going on then?
We were transcending scarcity at the material level, and we had weapon systems that were species lethal. Those two things occurred about the same time, and it was like to be a signaling, an existential signaling, like the end of a steady state you'd been in 200,000 years. And the only analogy you can go to in terms of the transformation is like when a new species appears in evolution, you have what they call punctuated equilibrium. You leave the womb and a new appears. And that's what we're on the stage of. We are going to, we're coming to the end of the human experience. We have all institutions, thoughts, patterns of, we've had to deal with our self-reflective consciousness, and we've had to have some way of dealing with that consciousness in terms of what's it all about. So we have a lot of invented religions.
What do you mean we're coming to the end of the human experience? Do you mean our planet will end?
No, I don't think that. I think it's an evolutionary thing that we're about to become in a new relationship to the cosmos that we have not been. We have been in a gestating state, as all of consciousness is, because the whole universe is synergetic. We could not, 4 million years ago, when we were contained Homo sapien in Australopithecine, 4 million years ago, we could not have been talking like we're talking now. There was an evolutionary development and speciation occurred. We had Homo erectus, we had Homo habilis and that, and 200,000 years ago our species appeared. We're coming to the end of that. We're coming into a new relationship to the cosmos if we make it, which the odds are that we are very likely to join entropy and blow the whole thing up.
Do you believe...
clinging to outdated institutions that we require a world, the future requires a world that our institutions have not been able, are unable to deal with adequately yet.
Do you think that, you know, the popular idea that because the Mayan calendar ended on December 21st, 2012, that will be a great change, the life as we know it, the earth as we know it will be very different, or perhaps the end, or perhaps in the end is our beginning? Do you think we will take a huge leap into an expanded consciousness in 2012?
We may coincidentally, I don't know. It's just all things that are done that can be understood. What I try to do, for whatever it's worth, is I try to, particularly lately, I try to avoid any fundamentalism natures of the universe. All kinds of people have claimed that they have had the word of God, and they know the way the universe is and what's right.
And they always had religions and as great revelations.
Not only religions, but also institutions.
Yeah,
also institutions.
But really, basically, it's all about getting money out of people.
Well, that is currently now. That's currently the thing. But avoid anything that isn't synergetic. That is, we're in a condition, and we're going to be introduced, if we make it, if we're going to be introduced, and it would be like Gaia, it's a good metaphor, it seems to me, that the earth is a metaphor, everything is connected to everything else, that we are going to come into what would be like a liberated order in contradistinction to the historical pattern which James Joyce very appropriately called history is a nightmare of scarcity out of which we're attempting to awaken, and we do now have the capability of realizing, never mentioned, you'll notice, in any of the press, or certainly the political, we have at a level of capability, nothing to do with the reality, or not nothing, but a different relation. We have transcended material scarcity. Material scarcity.
Circa 1970.
But now,
which is one of the reasons
before we lived in a world from 200,000 years ago to 1970, which was characterized in real terms, in terms of our capability. Thank goodness in a way, because it protected us from wiping ourselves out. We didn't have the capability. If we had had the mindset, bombing Dresden, bombing Tokyo, firebombing, incendiary, dropping napalm on children and napalm, all of this, if we had that, if we had the capability...
In 1400, we wouldn't be here now.
Well, 1400 goes way back into the myths of history, and also I would have done that thing about Columbus you're talking. I have a great feeling for Columbus. He was a hell of a mariner, and he came and he sailed, and October 12th is a particular date for me. It's a personalized thing.
Why?
Well, because Columbus is representing the...
Oh, I see. You tie that into Columbus Day as in discovery, as in change.
As I tie it into, we're all from Africa. Everybody comes, the whole species is from Africa.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the peoples of the world went. I just had my DNA sent. I'm going to have it sent on the Y chromosome. I'm going to go into the myths of history of my background, which everyone ought to do, and cooperate with Spencer Wells, National Geographic, and other scientific studies to get a reading of the human history in a way that the science is making available to.
What is your background? What is your nationality?
Well, it's just basically WASP. You know, English, Scottish, Isle of Man, and I had one of my paternal grandfather was from East Prussia. That's all, but it's WASP, you know.
Well, I'm half Spanish. My mother was from Spain, and Spain is such a crossroads that we are every race all merging into one.
Yeah.
So and my father was Scottish and Irish.
But we all come from Africa. Think in big patterns now. We all come from Africa. Yes. And Spencer Wells is an amazing thing. And what can be done in the name of education in terms of multimedia is staggering. We haven't had anything like it. We can have multimedia educational stuff that is going to knock our socks off.
Well, certainly if you told Marie Antoinette about what's going on today, she wouldn't have believed it.
Right. Well, it would have been there.
If you told Marie Antoinette about shampoo, she wouldn't have believed it. I mean, let's face it.
Right, right. But or Galileo said that we're not the center of the universe, and that really upset people's sense of...
It just ticked the Pope off no end.
No, not only that, everybody, Hieronymus Bosch, those
yeah.
paintings...
Oh, I love Hieronymus Bosch.
But what it did is it messed with people's sense of identity, and if you're messing with people's sense of identity, it's very dangerous, because people have to have some sort of the identity that people feel is really very important.
But can't they get past that and
that's
make
what we
their
have to do.
identity one of change and openness to new ideas?
Well, what you have to do is get to the, in my humble opinion, I mean, you get down to politics, economic theory, how Mr. Obama, the politics of the moment and all that and everything, is we are going to have to learn to live with, and it's never mentioned anywhere anymore, if ever it was, we could repeat it over and over and over. We have transcended material scarcity for the Homo sapiens species, the entire species, and the ecology, a condition that has never applied to all of human history until this moment.
So really, we're on the threshold of a completely new time.
That's right. And that's like leaving the womb, or that's like leaving the context, and you're messing with people's identities. And remember, all of our institutions were predicated within a particular condition that's been qualitatively transformed, existentially significantly so, at the level of capability, which is still latent. We have a future. We do not have institutions relating to the future. We are only reifying or reestablishing or dealing with, and are going to have to subsume the institutions and the assumptions of the past.
A pattern that is always repeated? For example, the church and the people were not ready to accept Galileo's theories, and so the world had to evolve to the point where Galileo could be accepted.
Yeah, that would be within a steady...
And are we in the same place now? We have to evolve to accept the future as we will know it, because we are still in many ways living in the early 19th century in some ways, certainly when it comes to...
No, I think we're living in the year 2010.
No, but I mean, for example, the grip that organized religion has on people, that's almost medieval. In some cases, the rise of fundamentalism. This is, to my way of thinking, an almost neo-medieval kind of abdication of personal responsibility, and I leave it all to the deity. Well, yes, but God helps those who help themselves.
Don't forget, it's a long period. It's 3.8 billion years when organic evolution began, 13.8 billion years when this universe began. It's a long process, and the people have a sense of identity and so forth. And Galileo was saying we weren't the center of the universe. It messed them up. But that was a small change. That was a quantitative change within what has now become qualitative, leading to essentially steady state, and it's now leading to a qualitative. It's not enough to say a paradigm. It's a paradigm, a paradigm, a paradigm, a paradigm, a paradigm, a paradigm, a paradigm of virtually every institution that have been inherited out of history that we have to subsume.
But my point is that it's always been that way. And
no, it wasn't that way in that time. There were things going on in China. There were things going on elsewhere. There was a building. There was a quantitative change going on. Things happening. We were learning more. But now it's qualitative, and that's what they call in evolution. You have to go to such metaphors. It's speciation. It is qualitative
because
transformation.
Our lives have been truly transformed by the absence of, although as we film this, we are, of course, in the Great Recession. So I'm not sure that a lot of people would say that we are free from want. Those who are,
no, you don't confuse, if I may, the reality with the capability. We have a capability that we do not have institutions that allow us to have what the full capability is now existent.
Do you think it was not existent? The plan of the so-called Illuminati or the Bilderberg Group or some group?
Well, that's the way some people would see it, and you want to deal with that. And it's something that the fact that you've always had a ruling elite who set the pattern for everything is part of history, from the pharaohs on to the kings and the emperors of Rome.
Do you think it's the same group simply transformed according to...
Well, after Venice and the banking system began, and the money system and the modern world, and then Adam Smith and the steam engine and all these kind of things, yeah, there's a few people who own all the capital assets, and they run things and they set the thing up.
Do you believe in extraterrestrials?
No, I do not know that. I don't believe absolutely in anything. There may be, okay, but back to the Illuminati, the institutions we've inherited.
Maybe I was linking one with the other.
Yeah, the institutions that we've inherited are going to have to be subsumed, not overthrown, but subsumed. So we're going to have anchor to history, but we're going to have a subsuming of those institutions, transformative, in terms of what the future requires, in terms of the new reality the future beckons. Nietzsche said the future is as important to the present as the past. The future has we have a capability, and our institutions are not geared to a liberated order. We have a liberated order for every single human being can realize their own potential, rather than being essentially serfs on a feudal estate where the productive capability is always, as it always has been, held by a few leaders who led that around, and the serfs would go along, the duke would lose the estate in a crap game with some other duke or earl, and they get so many cows, so many chickens, so many pigs, and so many serfs, and they just went along, and we're still in the same situation. And we don't have vision. We lack for vision in terms of what the future requires.
Keep the so-called masses from having a vision, so that they are, you know, good little serfs and do as they are told, and you dangle the carrot, and the carrot is of minimal value to you, but it is of immense life-saving value to the so-called masses, and they keep running and doing as they're told just to keep getting their few crumbs. Isn't that all part of the plan?
Yeah, but I don't blame the ones who are doing that, or the bankers, or the politicians. I'd say it is the fault of the intellectuals, particularly left-wing or intellectuals.
So many people are self-styled intellectuals who really aren't.
Not talking about self-styled, talking about real intellectuals who are thinking
who decides who is a real intellectual?
Well, how do you decide that? People who are bringing forth some sort of an understanding of things comprehensively that'll stand up to scientific modeling and so forth, and that these things can be presented as part of the understanding that can then come to inform the political classes. The more you're ensconced in an old institution, the less you're able to think outside the box.
Okay, and on that note, I'm afraid we're almost out of time. My guest has been the unique and amazing Harold Channer, one of the founders and fathers of modern public access. He has had his show on since 1970, Conversations with Channer, seen as we film this every weekday, 11 a.m., Channel 34 on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, and all over the world on the World Wide Web. So wherever you're seeing this, you can, and probably do, watch Conversations with Channer, a fascinating, groundbreaking show. And I could just listen to you for hours, and you are fascinating and brilliant, and you are just an absolute unique soul, and it's just a great pleasure to just know you.
We forgot to get to Columbus, but maybe we could. But anyway,
Columbus,
go ahead.
Ohio? But anyway, my name is Diana Montfort. My guest has been Harold Channer, who's so great. And I love you.
You ain't so bad yourself, darling.
Well, thank you, baby. Yes. Anyway, my name is Diana Montfort. I love you. I want you to be happy. I want you to love yourself. I want you to take care of yourself. You know how much you mean to me. Even if no one else loves you, I love you. Make sure you love yourself. See, that makes two of us. Not so bad all of a sudden, right? Now two people love you. You
well
and me.
said.
Yeah. So, I love you. I will see you next time. And now we have to hit that pesky bye-bye button.
All right.
Excuse me. I wonder if it's this one, is it?
It is. That's your
No. Those are my credits. Okay. Well, may as well hit them one.
You want to do that?
Yeah, let's hit the credits. And now I'll hit the